Hello and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to show you how I built this life-size Han in Carbonite display piece for my home arcade and cinema. I do want to just add right off the bat that there are chapters below. If you want to skip this intro, please do jump straight into the build. What I did want to explain before we get into that is some of the context about how I got here and the decisions that I made in doing this. The main one being that I'm in Australia, so purchasing a lot of the prefab components and stuff from the US wasn't very cost effective. Often you would be paying double the price from exchange rates and shipping and stuff. So I'm going to show you how and why I did that while still keeping this look authentic. The second thing I want to jump into very quickly here is some of the resources at my disposal. So the first one is there is a Facebook group called Han in Carbonite. Everyone on there is very helpful. There are a lot of interesting ideas and thoughts being shared around how these builds can happen, what types of glues and paints that people are using through to the actual measurements and blueprints and stuff. They're all on there. I urge you to check it out if you're interested in doing this. There is a guy on there who has an Etsy store called Wes Coke. Wes Coke makes these resin molds of Han Solo. He is the gold standard from what I can see. His craftsmanship is amazing. His customer service is almost even better, I would say. He was very helpful to me, particularly being here in Australia, and I appreciate all the work he did in getting this to me. So the Facebook page would be the first stop. The second thing is I've added 2 videos below. They go into the builds of these as well, and I would suggest you look at them. I watched both of those videos maybe about 600 times each, just to figure out how people were doing different bits and pieces. The first one is by Todd Black. He has a store where he sells a lot of these components, and the second one is by a channel called Docking Bay 327. There's a guy on there called Tony. He was really nice and gave me a lot of really interesting tips. He answered all my questions, so I urge you to check out those videos also. With that being said, let's dive into the build, and we'll come back at the end and I'll take you on a bit of a more up close and personal look at this piece, and then I'll give you a bit of a tour of the room very quickly and how it sits in here and what it looks like. But let's jump into the build. Let's go.
So we'll start with what I did and then decided completely against it, which was build these 2 frames. And I thought to myself, the only real way of making sure that this thing was perfectly square was just to buy a piece of wood and cut that to the exact dimensions I wanted. So I bought this big piece of structural plywood and then had it cut to the exact dimensions, put the sides on there, and then basically prepped it for sanding. What that meant was that I was basically making sure that it was structurally sound, and then trying to find any little divots and stuff inside the wood that I needed to patch, any knots that were protruding too much, just so I could get them sanded over patched over and then sanded, of course. This was the first sanding session of many in this project. Anyone who has ever made one of these will know what I'm talking about. Essentially with this wood, my goal is to make it feel and look not like wood, so I had to remove all the grain from it. So yeah, look, obviously patching continues here. And then I had an idea as to how was I going to make Han flush with the front of the frame. So I got my router out and experimented just routing these little channels in to the surface, and the channels would basically tell me what space was going to be taken up by carbonite, and then obviously the frame is anything outside of that on the edges. So I obviously sanded the inside of the channel, and then I knew that when I poured glue at the end or needed to fill it with whatever filler I was using, that it would just go very neatly to the edge of where I'd routed. So yeah, obviously the patching was a bit of an ongoing process throughout. And this is what I was left with. So I now knew that the inside of that routed channel area was going to be the carbonite, and anything outside of that was going to be frame. And I had used one piece of wood. I didn't need to fill it with, buckets of filler or scrap pieces of wood in order to make it flush with the surface, and I was quite happy with that. But then there's this job here, which was basically getting rid of all these DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff out of these things, taking the shelves out and completely sealing up this window properly, painting the middle section there, which was had a white strip going down the middle of it, which I got rid of, painted that black, and then decided to go back and put in a little bit more reinforcement to the back of the frame. I know a lot of the kits online, that you see or that you can find for this project are MDF, which means that they're a lot lighter. This is really heavy, but it's also very solid, so I'm sort of happy with it. So now just quickly back over to these side panels. So these are 3D printed locally because it was just too expensive to buy these from any of the suppliers in the States and have them shipped over. This lot of panels cost me around about $250. The paint was, another 30 or so for that chrome look. Obviously I had certain parts taped off to stay black. The greeblies are already built in. I also added some of my own greeblies later on just to make it look a bit better. And then what you were left with was essentially this look here for the panels. And you'll see the reveal a bit later on without the tape on there. But yeah, look, I was pretty happy with that for $250. I did, however, purchase all of the right stickers and everything like that from Todd Blatt's Custom 3D Stuff store. And this is the pack that he sells. Comes with the acrylic and everything. Unfortunately, the acrylic, I broke it, unfortunately. So I had to replace that with a different solution from a local shop here. Now this is actually a millimetre thinner than Todd's one, and I actually think it disperses the light a little bit better. I did buy this panel from him also. This is a picture from his website. Because it fits everything really nicely. So it's designed obviously completely to fit in this sort of stuff. This is the back of the green light, flashing green light. This is like a little dome that you make so that it disperses the green light across the whole front acrylic display. This is obviously me in the middle of wiring and hot gluing everything down. Again, as I said, I bought this one panel. It's the Hero panel. I bought this from Todd because I needed the Hero panel to look very, very authentic and fit all the lights properly and stuff. And the electronics and stuff are from a guy called Fetronics, which is where everyone gets their electronics from. Of course, or I should say most people get their electronics from because he's made them specifically for this Hahn carbonite build. So this is essentially the only thing that I bought all the components for from the US, legitimately, so that it would look as real as possible. And obviously it's the Hero panel, right? So I want it to look really cool. I want all the lighting to be really spot on and all the knobs and stuff to look like, the way they should. Here's the extra Fetronics component, lighting component that I've actually integrated into the printed panel. So together they look really good next to each other. Here's obviously me putting a rough outline of where the panels are going to go. Here's a base coat for the frame, which I was hoping with enough coats that the wood grain wouldn't still show through, but it wasn't the case. So I ended up just actually putting filler across the entire frame and then sanding that down. And eventually, once I'd painted it, it actually had that carbon look to it. Not carbonite, but just the framing, which was going to be a dark grey gloss, which is this one here you see. And so after I'd done all that, I took this picture on the left and then I superimposed Hahn onto him, which you see on the right there, just to give me a bit of an idea. While I was waiting for my Hahn mould to turn up, I then did this. I put the filler on the sides as well and got that ready to sand and paint. Put a bit of a mock picture on the top there. Did a bit more stenciling for where the panels would go. And then started a new project which was later abandoned, but it was this thing here that I wired and had to solder and hot glue up, which you pressed a button and it played some sounds, varying sounds. The actual carbonite itself, the unit itself, and then Jabba laughing and stuff. I may integrate it later, but for now I sort of put a bit of effort in and didn't end up using it. So back to the drawing board on that one. But here's where I got to next after I'd sanded down and painted. Much happier with this. It was glossy, it was vibrant, I loved it. I could see now this coming together a bit better. And I hadn't really put on the top or bottom pieces yet properly. This was obviously, they're just sitting in there. They weren't actually fastened yet, but I just put them in there to see how they'd look. And then the day came where my cast turned up, and I was so excited. This is obviously it straight out of the box. I trimmed all of the extra threads and stuff off the edges, placed it down on top just to see where it would go, how it would sit. And then, obviously got all the measurements right and stuff, figured out where the feet would go and all that stuff. I measured his whole body out so that it would be the same height as Harrison Ford, essentially, in real life. So I know his head's tilted a little bit, but I took a bit of stuff into account to make sure it was pretty accurate to where his feet and stuff would be. And that was now starting to get very exciting. I did the trick that a few other people have done online, which is filling up with some of that expandable foam just to make him not sound too hollow. Obviously this was a staple gun. It didn't work in all parts, but it did do enough just to get it stuck down for the time being while I applied or I should say while the concrete nails started to take effect. So yeah, look, I was very happy with where this was going. It was super secure. It was not sounding hollow, and yeah, all of the pieces were starting to resemble Han Solo. So yeah, just carrying on here. I've obviously got some weights there on top just to help the glue set, along with the staples. And here is the finished product after the first day of having the cast. Now, I should point out, I should have trimmed more from around the head and body because I ended up with these mounds around them, around where he was. Next time, if I did it again, I would definitely trim more off. But look, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. I ended up going back in and cutting a bit more out later on. Ran out of filler here, so had only done sort of 3/4 of it, and then had to go and get some more filler for this space here. But you can see there I've filled in the channels that I'd put the router into before, and I now had the feet attached, and then all of the seams, at least initially I had at least one go of the epoxy putty on the seams that I'd had a go at. I should say Todd Blatt's video, he uses water at one point. God, the moment I started doing that, it was just so helpful to those to that putty smoothing out and not being observable, I guess, after you put on a primer coat. So yeah, recommend that to everyone. Here's the next day. I think you see my iPad down the bottom there with me, just looking for reference how that carbonite texture should look. And here's getting really exciting now, obviously sanding down that first coat and then using the wood glue and water solution just to smooth it out a bit more. Wood glue and water is really good. I find more so that once you have painted and then you put on the clear coat, it makes it much easier. I think because it's just got this sort of shinier surface that you're painting on top of, it makes it easier, or smoother surface, I should say. But you don't have to sacrifice too much of the actual carbonite look when you do this. Now this is him having a bit of a sunbake just to get everything to cure, and getting very close to being ready to paint. Now, I spoke before about some excess vinyl that I hadn't cut out. You can see it's a little bit too bumpy around the edges of his head on the left there, and on the right after I'd done some trimming. This is the back of the unit. Now, that big piece of wood with the LEDs around it is not just for the LEDs, but it's where I'm going to eventually put my support, or one of my main support structures to the back of this, which is a very large TV mounting arm bracket, but I'll get to that in a second. This is my first coat of the silver, and then second coat, and then once I pulled the tape off It was nice and clean, but I noticed a few more spots, so I did them again and then repainted them afterwards. Here's my TV bracket, which holds it to the wall. It's capable of taking about, I think it's 50 kilos. This unit was about 35, so more than enough. And I put a little right angle bracket, black one at the bottom as well to hold it up as a secondary. And here it is mounted now with the lighting on and everything. So pretty happy with that. It's sort of, it looks super cool inside the room. And I'm pretty stoked with how it turned out, to be honest. I've since I shot this, I've actually gone back in and just touched up a few little extra bits and pieces that I wasn't happy with, but realistically it's there now. People are very impressed. It looks super cool. I may, as I say, replace some of those other side panels with the proper Volvo ones later on, but we'll see. For now, it's mind-blowing. When people come into the room, they think it looks awesome. But anyway, yeah, look, I appreciate everyone's help inside the Facebook group. I appreciate you watching this. I hope you've taken something out of it. I'm always available if you want to send me a comment on this video. I'll answer everything I can. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I hope this was helpful. And thanks to everyone else in this community for being so nice. And if you're interested in any more content similar to this, please feel free to check out my channel or find me on Instagram @PlanetPow. Thanks a lot. See you later.